Cybersecurity threats are on the rise, and that creates opportunities for MSPs to build new business. But that opportunity comes with extra costs and potentially significant liabilities. We asked Harry Guy, Senior Manager Sales APAC for ConnectWise, and Steve Dawson, Director ONGC Systems, about how MSPs can navigate a path to further profitability. We started by asking Harry Guy about the implications for MSPs as security threats increase.
There's almost a sort of an ambiguity, I guess, with regards to security, and you know, it's almost been like sort of brushed under the carpet, but not. It's kind of by accident, really, I think. So, you know, it's almost like, you know, MSP partner sort of, you know, doesn't necessarily have responsibility for it. It's not in, it's not in their agreement or tool set, but then the end customer kind of almost thinks they are covered by the MSP. In essence, that's kind of forced, you know, partners to, understand that they want to build out a practice, because it's probably not the thing you want to do, sort of, just dipping your toe in and sort of do bits and bobs here. I guess if you want to, specialize and build out, a sort of a service provision for that, you want to do that knowing that you're going to deliver a good service, because you don't want that affecting your strong MSP, managed services brand in the industry. That's forced MSPs to kind of look internally and say, do we want to do this? And if we do, how do we go about it, and how do we tackle it? And it's a different skill set.
Managing those expectations isn't always easy, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations have to be had, says ONGC Systems Director Steve Dawson.
There's always this, this underlying expectation in most cases where customers just expect that if they're engaged with an IT company at any level, that they're protected in some way or another from a cybersecurity perspective. So, if we purely looked at managed service customers, i.e. they're under a retained IT service, i.e. with their external IT department, I can sort of understand why customers would expect a degree of coverage of cybersecurity, because in their mind and their perception of that world, it falls under the IT umbrella. So, it's certainly something that we've considered and thought about, and we've really carefully planned how we delivered this to customers well, because delivered poorly or managed poorly can put customers offside. As I said before, there's this whole concept of having a safe space to talk to customers about it, and you're really utilizing and leveraging the trust that you've built with these customers to have these conversations as well. So, we really need to help them understand what's different, from a scope of services perspective. As an MSP, we've generally had a very high level coverage of security. And when I say that, I'm talking about like password management and recommendations, patch management and upgrades, just basic type of not even ad hoc, but, basic cybersecurity management practices.
Such an approach, however, does not denote a comprehensive cybersecurity practice. Education is critical if the customer is to get the cybersecurity they need, and the MSP is to be able to deliver it sustainably.
They don't understand that we need to acquire additional resources. They don't understand that a cybersecurity engineer in our business is different to a managed services engineer in our business. They don't understand the costs attributed to that. They also don't understand the additional liability that us as an organisation takes on board by offering cybersecurity services. So, look, I find that, at the end of the day, it's all about relationships with your customers. If you're in a transactional relationship with your customer, it's going to be really hard to have these conversations. But, if you're in a really proactive partnership type relationship with your customers, being transparent, I find, is always the best key. And it's a scary conversation sometimes.
It is important that the customer understand the path that they are on.
I think the key thing here is every business that hasn't got some sort of cybersecurity in place is generally going to be at a maturity level of 0 or 1, depending on the scale that you're looking, right? And I think for every business that's quite confronting as well, but I think it's quite important to demonstrate to customers that 99% of businesses are at 0 and 1, but we want to help them get to a place of acceptable risk, or at least to a point where they're comfortable with their level of risk. So we take them on their cybersecurity journey by starting with this assessment piece, and it's generally a low cost, no long-term obligation engagement where we take a step back, we engage the additional resources that we need and tools that we need to adequately assess the business from a cybersecurity standpoint. We align that against a framework or a maturity model. At the end of that cybersecurity assessment, we also provide them with a bit of a cybersecurity roadmap, and I use the term cyber fitness, which, and I use that term because cybersecurity is certainly not something that's ever going to be set and forget. If anything, it's going to be, we need to work harder on it, more consistently on it as we move into the future. So, this whole concept of a cybersecurity roadmap means that we can help the customer address the cybersecurity landscape in bite-sized pieces that is easy to manage from a change management perspective, but also doesn't overstretch cash flow, because many people don't have budgets to manage cybersecurity in their businesses either. And then from there, we're generally recommending things like implementing the 24/7 SOC EDR solutions. We're talking about doing regular cybersecurity training. We're talking about just all of those best practices that we all are pretty familiar with at this stage, but just actually putting them into action, getting the rubber to hit the road for the client.
For an MSP, it is important also not to lose sight of any potential impact on your own business, especially any additional risks you are taking on board.
At the end of the day, it's the customer's decision whether they undertake a cybersecurity assessment or whether they implement a cybersecurity strategy into their business. But as the MSP, we need to understand the liabilities and legislation that we're now required to abide by in the event of a cyber attack in our customers' environment. So we've actually had to undertake the process of liability waivers in our organisation as well. We need to have a degree of comfort with those conversations as well, because the liability that we carry by not having those conversations can drastically cost us long term if something was to happen. So yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, and it's just trying to make sure everyone's on the same page and clear on what the path forward is.
Building cybersecurity capabilities also adds cost to the business. It's important, therefore, to map out a cost-effective pathway.
It's not a cheap activity. It can be very fruitful, over a period of time, and if you get it right. But certainly in the initial sort of short to medium term, that there is a pretty chunky layout. As these talented, qualified, technically sound security folk, they're worth some dollars. So I think and you can go down that route. That's if you work out the ROI model and you back yourself and your business, and that's totally fair. Or maybe there's a way you could promote internal resource, train them, etc. ConnectWise, we are a software company, of course, and into the security space, but we do also provide additional services around that, such as SOC and dedicated technical professionals to assist with that growth. So it's more of a pre-built approach rather than doing it yourself. So we've seen a lot of our partners utilize that approach as they're growing and scaling their business to an MSP plus, maybe, rather than a fully fledged cybersecurity house from day one.
Finally, as customers increasingly rely on vendors and MSPs for help with cybersecurity, it is important to recognise that they themselves have vulnerabilities, which is why trust and transparency are critical.
It's been pretty evident over the last, probably 12 months that there have been, a number of vendors that have unfortunately been sort of subject to that. So I think you could probably, there's like an honesty factor, I think, as a vendor to say, thankfully it wasn't us, but we need to kind of double up on our audits and ensure that nothing slips through the cracks. So I kind of think, learning from market experience is just as important, and not being too overconfident. I know that here at ConnectWise, we use those situations to double down, and frankly, that's just raised and heightened our sense of awareness to ensure that we're doing everything in our power to do that. I think honesty, but I think that's the true model about anything, rather than not just sort of security.
That was Harry Guy, Senior Manager Sales, APAC for ConnectWise, and Steve Dawson, Director, ONGC Systems, discussing the intricacies of developing additional cybersecurity service levels for customers. To learn more, visit www.connectwise.com/cybersecurity and www.connectwise.com/company/trust.